Welcome back to the Bad Influence Podcast. I'm Jordan Banderas, and on today's episode, I want to talk about something that I came across on social media. And apparently, this particular subject is causing quite a stir because even psychologists are talking about it right now. I'm referring to the loneliness epidemic. Apparently, this is the new epidemic after what we have gone through in the past few years with COVID. Now we're dealing with this. And I feel that we need to dive into this topic because loneliness can actually impact our lives in a negative way. Honestly, I was taken aback when I learned about the extent of damage that loneliness can cause. While I was researching the topic to talk about this on the podcast, I came across some research that suggests that loneliness it's the same as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. You heard that right. 15. Now that's a lot of fucking cigarettes for one single day. I know people that smoke that much and their bodies are showing down because that's too much. Now imagine you're not smoking, you're just having this feeling of loneliness, or you just feel alone, and that actually is killing you slowly because the body takes that as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. So I was really surprised. And as someone who have felt this loneliness, I can tell you it's not a good feeling because you're going to start feeling like there's nobody around you that will understand you. You're going to feel that you can't talk to anyone about your issues. You start isolating yourself, and there are times where just because someone says something that you may feel that is part of how you think or how you feel, you may agree with them when in reality you may not even agree with them. But the only reason why you're doing it is because you don't want to feel alone and you want to be part of that group. I've seen it happen. Probably you know what I'm talking about. And it's happening a lot. It's happening a lot, and that's why I wanted to talk about this issue of loneliness, because I feel it's crucial that we understand how feeling alone can impact our lives, especially in this era of social media where we feel like we're connected through our phones when in reality we're actually drifting farther apart from each other because we don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to literally listen. Probably you have seen this. People are not listening anymore. We're just literally trying to react to everything we hear or say. And one important thing that I want to share for this episode is that while I was researching this topic, I came across a survey from last year conducted by Cigna that shows 58% of adult Americans reported feeling lonely sometimes or always. Now, 58% of Americans, those are fathers, those are sisters, sons, daughters, friends. That's a lot of people. Now, we're not taking into consideration with this survey teenagers as well. But I'm pretty sure that's a higher number, especially right now. Now, one of the things that didn't help this situation was the COVID-19 pandemic, because after the pandemic started, the feelings of loneliness became even more widespread because due to social distancing measures, which unfortunately they were trying to fix the problem with COVID so nobody will get and kind of like it will go away on its own. But the problem with those social distancing measures is that it forced us to limit our interactions with others and stay away from our loved ones. And during this time, something that I noticed is that people started losing their ability to connect with other people, even their own families. And all of this happened while we had to stay home. Because what happened, and this happened to me, is that a lot of people fell into the rabbit hole of social media. And during that time, there was a lot of shit going on. There were videos about everything happening. So you could fall into that rabbit hole so easily. I almost did. My wife had to literally snap me out of it. We had the election, the riots, everything else. So there was so much information going on, and we didn't have anybody to talk about it in a deep way, like to really understand what was going on. So a lot of us were making our own assumptions about everything that was happening. And when we do that, we didn't really want to share what was going on with others because we didn't want to feel, or we didn't want to be seen as the odd ones. And another thing that I saw with the social distancing measures is that there was a rise in caring behavior since the pandemic started, which, in my opinion, it has created a bigger wedge between people in general, because a Karen will come off as a bitch, including a chat. So people don't want to deal with that. People see Karens as dramatic, over dramatic, demanding, entitled, and nobody wants to deal with that. So if you're labeled a Karen, you may feel more alone because nobody wants to deal with a Karen. Even friends will cut you off. It has happened. I've seen it on stories on social media where, people get labeled a Karen, and what happens is that they end up getting isolated by the people around them because nobody wants to deal with them. So it's not a it's not a good situation to be in. And like I mentioned, I have experienced loneliness. So I can relate to people feeling alone because before meeting my wife, I struggle with not having a support system and being in a toxic environment with my family, which is something that I have mentioned in past episodes. And let's be honest, being in a situation like that will make you feel alone. When your own family, your own group of friends don't really understand you and don't listen to you, is like, well, why am I talking to them? Why am I here? What's going on? You start questioning them and yourself at the same time. But again, loneliness can be caused by many factors and things that are happening in your life as well. It's not just one single thing that is gonna cause that feeling. It can happen for a lot of reasons. But what I've come to realize after I got married is that one of the ways loneliness can impact us is by causing us to lose our social and communication skills, because I didn't know how to communicate with people, including my wife. I never realized that until after I got married. When I was trying to communicate with my wife, but I always felt like people never listened to me. So I always felt the same with my wife, when in fact she was actually trying to listen to me. So loneliness can cause a severe number of problems. One of these is, like I mentioned, not being able to communicate or not listening. And due to this, I believe that when we feel alone, we also feel like nobody is listening to us. And we may start thinking, why should I listen to them if they are not listening to me. And what happens as a result is that when we talk to others, we might unintentionally try to dominate the conversation and make it all about us without listening to what the other person that we're talking to has to say. Probably you know somebody that will cut you off in the middle of your sentence and start talking about their issues when you're trying to talk about yours. I know I have done that, and I know people that do that, but now I literally tell them like, hey, let me talk. But I also understand why they're trying to be like that. So the problem with this is that sometimes when we do this, it can make us come across as someone who doesn't care about others or just simply an asshole. And again, nobody wants to deal with that as well, because the other person might want to have somebody to listen to them about their issues and help them. But when we act this way, we're not going to help them. We're wasting their time. We're wasting our time. And we're just going to get mad at each other. I can attest to this as, like I said, I used to behave this way. And in my experience, it can ruin relationships. It will ruin your relationship. You do that with your spouse, your husband, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever, in your relationship, and someone is going to get mad. Or probably both of you is going to get mad. And then they're going to start fighting. You guys are going to start fighting with each other because there's not that communication channel where the other person can talk to the person they're living with about their issues. So that can cause this issue of loneliness. And when you unintentionally ruin relationships by acting this way, and I say unintentionally because sometimes we just act this way without even knowing, that feeling of loneliness grows to the point where you feel like an outcast because nobody wants to talk to you, nobody's listening to you, so you start feeling like an outcast. And you actually can, and sometimes this happens, and I did this, you start isolating yourself, which is terrible for you because it doesn't help with that feeling of loneliness. It actually makes it worse. It makes it look like you want to feel alone, so people start reaching out to you. One thing that I do want to share is that before I met my wife, I used to feel like I didn't fit anywhere, not even with my own family. And it's a terrible feeling because it can make you feel like you have nobody, like I mentioned as well. And in my experience, when you feel lonely, it can go either one of two ways. You can either spiral into depression and feel empty, leading to suicidal thoughts, which unfortunately leads to people actually taking their own lives. Or you can become bitter and angry and start hating everyone. Either way is not a good way to live. However you feel, if it's one or the other, if you can relate to this, if you're like, you know what, I feel one way or the other, it's not a good feeling. So if you're feeling alone, look for someone or get the help that you need so you can actually work through those feelings. But another thing that I realized going through this in my life is that sometimes you can actually go through both phases, as I did. At first, I was depressed, questioning why I was alive. I started having suicidal thoughts because of this. I was like, why am I alive? Nobody talks to me. Nobody likes me. I'm alone. Like, what the fuck? Like I was having those feelings. But then, just when I started to have suicidal feelings or suicidal thoughts, I started to get angry. I became angry and bitter, making everything about me. That was my only choice at that point. I didn't care about anyone else. I was like, you know what? Fuck everyone else. this is about me. I became selfish in a bad way. Because there's selfish in a good way and selfish in a bad way. But in this case, it was bad way selfish. And unfortunately, this behavior, if you ever go through this, will make it harder to connect with others because nobody wants to hang out with someone that acts that way. Nobody wants to hang out with someone that is always angry or a downer. And that's what happens when you feel lonely too. It makes you feel that you have to bring everything down to the level that you feel, which is alone. So you want everybody else to feel that way. But nobody wants to feel that way. So people are going to start walking away from you. And that's why I wanted to talk about this as well, because I don't want you to go through that. I know how it feels. I know how bad it feels. I know how bad it can make you act in front of others. It can make you say or do things that you may not even realize that are wrong. But here's the thing in regards to my situation. After meeting my wife, I realized that was a game changer for me. Because it was the first time I really felt connected with someone. However, and this is where it gets interesting, and this is where you have to put the work, because it was challenging. It was fucking challenging. It took us years to get to that point. As I've mentioned in past episodes, my English was horrible. I didn't know how to say words. I didn't know how to pronunciate. I didn't know if I was saying them right, but I was just trying to say them. I was just trying to express myself to my wife. And I honestly don't even know how the fuck she even understood me. Because my English was bad. I don't understand how she was able to understand me at one point. Because I didn't understand myself. But what really helped me get out of that bad mindset was Katie's curiosity about me. And the reason why I say that she was curious is because she had never dated a Mexican before. So she was naturally curious about me. I was like her pet, her first pet. She was like a child trying to learn more about me. That's funny though. She did something that nobody had ever done before. She took the time to ask me about my culture, my past, and my story. She wanted to know about me. So this made it easy for us to connect because she never judged me. She actually listened to everything that I tried to say. And she paid attention to what I was trying to say as well. So she will ask me, like, what are you trying to say? Or, like, how does that work? Because I was telling her about things that I did in Mexico, how I grew up, things that I did when I moved here. And obviously, I wasn't explaining them right. So she will ask me, like, I don't understand what you're trying to say. Like, can you explain it to me better? And unfortunately, because of that, I will get frustrated because it's hard to explain shit. And that's what I'm saying. Like, feeling alone can make you lose those communication skills because then you're like, I've never talked to anyone about this, so I don't know how to fucking explain it. That's how I felt at the beginning of my marriage. So, because my wife did all of this, we got this connection between us. We are like literally connected, and it made it easier for me to not feel alone anymore, which was hard as well because I've never felt like that before. So it was hard to get used to. At first I was like, ooh, like I don't know, like it was like a weird feeling. It was one of those feelings that it feels good, but because you've never been treated like that, you're like stay away, or you're gonna hurt me. Like, you're like iffy about it. That's pretty much what happened with me. And I did that for years. I'm not gonna lie, I did that for years. But one of the reasons why I wanted to share this is because I've talked to many people who have been in long term relationships, or they have a big group of friends. And a common theme that they always say, or that I have noticed, is that they still have this feeling of being alone, even though they've been on their relationship for years, or they have this big group of friends. So when I ask how come you still feel alone to some of the people that I talk to, and from my own experience as well, the answer that I found most common is that this has to do with the way we communicate with each other. Because too often we only look for reactions from other people instead of genuinely connecting with them. Whether it's talking to friends, coworkers, or anyone else in your life. The way we communicate can make or break relationships with them. The problem nowadays is that we don't talk to others to connect. We just want to be seen. So we just talk and say whatever comes to mind at first, just to be heard, just to be seen. Kind of like saying like, hey, I'm here. I don't want to feel alone. I don't want to be left out of the group. So I'm here. And then you just say whatever. But instead of doing that, just talk with whatever comes to our minds. What we should be doing is that we should be discussing things that we are holding on to with others. But we don't. We don't do that. We hold on to the things that we should be discussing with others that will help us process them. And then sometimes we just talk about random things that we don't know anything about. So we just try to take over a conversation that we know nothing about. This is one thing that I used to do, and I used to annoy people a lot. They will get so annoyed with me. And the problem is that when you do that with your partner, she or he is gonna stop listening to you. When you do that with your friends, it doesn't matter how big they are, like what's your group size of friends, if it's like 500, 1 to 10, 500, whatever, they're gonna stop listening to you because you don't say anything. You don't talk about anything that they're maybe interested about knowing, either about you or about life or about your day. So they're going to start walking away. Another thing I learned from my experience with loneliness is that being a good listener is crucial for creating meaningful connections with others. Because when we listen to others, we create a space where they can be open and vulnerable with us. And in turn, we can do the same. Because listening is a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. I listen to you and you listen to me. That creates a conversation, because when I'm listening to you, I'm going to pay attention to what you have to say. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to process it. And then I'm going to talk either about it, like give you advice or whatever, or I'm going to share something relatable to what you just said. And that creates a connection. So we can become vulnerable with each other. And this will help us build the connections we need in our lives, so we don't feel isolated. Because when we truly listen, we often find that we share similar stories and experiences, which can help us support each other and feel less lonely. We may also discover commonalities that allows us to find a sense of belonging and a community in a group. Like we can start building our own community, our own group of friends can become family. your partner will become your only family at that point. That's what happened with me. But here's the thing, I also believe the most important step in fighting loneliness is to cultivate a healthy relationship with ourselves to avoid this feeling. Because it's essential to be comfortable with our own company. This is something that a lot of people can't deal with. And it was shown during the pandemic where people were complaining about having to be at home, which I totally understand. But when they were complaining about like, oh, I can't be by myself, I don't like to be alone, I don't like to be in my house, then that's completely different. That's not wanting to deal with that feeling of loneliness. And because of what I realized during this whole time, during the pandemic, I feel also that it's essential to be comfortable with our own company and not always rely on others to feel fulfilled. We don't have to rely on others for fulfillment. We need to create a fulfilling life for ourselves and not allow others to create that for us, because then we're never going to feel fulfilled if we allow that to happen. I also feel that this means learning to listen to our own thoughts and emotions and finding inner peace. Which, like I was mentioning in regards to people in the pandemic, people didn't like to be inside their houses by themselves. And one of the reasons I feel like it's because they didn't want to listen to their own thoughts and emotions because they're not at peace within themselves. Because when we're at peace with ourselves, we can bring positive energy into our relationships, into our environment when we're surrounded by others. On the other hand, and this is what happened during the pandemic, if we're not at peace with ourselves, it's likely to show in our interactions with others, leading to further feelings of isolation and disconnection. But one recommendation that I have is to do things alone, such as going to the movies, going on a vacation by yourself, going to concerts, so you can actually create and enjoy your own company. And if you're wondering if I had done the same, done things by myself, yes, I did things by myself before I met my wife. I used to go to the movies alone. I used to go to restaurants alone. I used to go to concerts alone. And I enjoy it. I created memories from those things that I did by myself. And the reason why I also want you to do things like that is because, let's be honest, you'll be alive for a long time. So it's important to discover things that you like and enjoy by yourself. I feel like that's very important too. But I wanted to bring something up which is also important for everyone to keep in mind. With social media being such a big part of our lives right now, with our phones, computers, like everybody has access to social media. And due to this, it's easy to think we're always connected and never alone. Because now we can reach to people, to our community, to our friends group on social media and ask a question. It may take hours or minutes for somebody to answer, but you can put a question out there and get an answer at some point. So we may think that we're not alone due to things like that. But the truth is, having a ton of online friends or followers doesn't necessarily mean we're not feeling lonely. In fact, excessive use of social media has been linked to increased feelings of depression, anxiety, and loneliness. So it actually does the opposite. And there has been many cases lately where social media influencers with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers, they end up taking their lives because of depression. And people, I've seen some of the comments after that happens where they're like, how can you feel alone? Or how can you do that when you have all these followers? Well, it's not about the followers, it's about how they feel. And if they felt alone, even with that many followers, unfortunately, like I said, they took one way and that led to them taking their lives. And one of the problems with social media is that when you have this many friends or this many followers on social media, you can feel like you have meaningful relationships. But in reality, we might be lacking real in-person interactions. So it's important to balance our online connections with real-life relationships and make sure we're not neglecting either one, especially the real-life ones. That's what is actually going to help even more. That's going to be crucial. I also feel that it's crucial to form genuine connection with others. We need to find a way to connect, because if you don't have any type of connections with anybody in life, you're still going to feel alone. You're going to start isolating. Pretty much you're going to do everything that I have mentioned throughout the episode. But one of the things that you can do to connect with others is that you can reach out to old friends, the good ones, the ones that you just stopped talking to due to life. There was no argument, there was no fight. You can reconnect with them. You can join a social group, or simply, this is something that we don't really do nowadays, you can start a conversation with someone at a coffee shop, at the store, wherever. Just say, hi, how are you? I do that sometimes when I feel like the people or the person is not mad or anything like that. Sometimes I just reach out to people. Although it can be challenging in our digital age, we are social creatures who crave meaningful interactions. So it's important to do things like I mentioned, and it's also important to remember that even small interactions can make a big difference in a sense of connection with each other. And this is pretty much what the psychologists are saying in regards to the loneliness and pandemic. We need to do things like that. That's why I'm talking about that. Another thing that I want to mention is that if you're using a dating app to find that special someone, I'd recommend taking the time to read someone's profile and swiping right if you're really interested. I met my wife online, so that's why I'm mentioning this, because you need to read what they're saying, be interested about it, and when you meet in person, you need to ask more questions about their story so you guys can create that connection. Also, don't take rejection personally. And remember that building relationships takes time and effort. It's not going to happen on the first date. It's not going to happen on the second one. It may take weeks, months, or even years. But that's why you have to be curious about each other, so you guys can ask the right questions to create that connection. And something that I want to share, and it's also important, because it helped me fight with my feelings on loneliness, and even psychologists agree with this, is self-care. In my case, in my situation, my wife showed me that it is essential to take care of myself, because when we neglect our physical and emotional well-being, we become less available and less inclined to befriend and connect with other people because we're tired. So it's essential to take time for ourselves to recharge our batteries so we can show up as our best selves when spending time with friends and loved ones. That way we can listen, we can engage in the conversation. There's so many things that we need to do when we're talking to other people, and it takes a lot of time and energy. And if we're tired, we're exhausted, we're not going to be engaging. We're not going to listen. We're just going to be like, I'm tired. I've done that before. So if we don't take care of ourselves, we'll eventually become too tired to go out, like I was saying, and we'll become too tired to socialize. And people may stop reaching out to us. So it's important to prioritize self-care, either by going for a run, taking a bubble bath if you like that, getting a massage, or simply getting enough rest. Take care of yourself. That way you have the energy to connect with others, to conversate, to, enjoy other people's company. Because it's important. And when you do all of this, it will help fighting those feelings of loneliness. But you have to take care of yourself. You have to listen. You have to do pretty much everything that I talked about on the podcast. Because if you don't, then you may not be able to connect. And if you do something different to connect with others, you can share it on the comments. Send me an email or a DM. I would like to hear from you because I like to hear from people. I like to connect. But yeah, you do whatever works for you. If it's helping you with your loneliness and it helps you live the life that you want to live. But if it's not helping you, maybe something needs to change so you can actually get through those feelings. And that's what I wanted to share on today's episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the growth and the feedback. Remember to share, like, and subscribe. We are on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The link is in the episode's description. And here are my final thoughts. Start connecting with yourself so you can connect with others. And have a great day.